In Whiskey Town, the dead don't stay quiet. They hang, they bleed, and they whisper secrets through the flies. Just before dawn, Sheriff Ethan Cole stood alone in O'Connell's stables. The air was heavy with the smell of blood and horse sweat. Clay Dobbs was dead, his body cut down, but the message remained. Whiskey don't need no sheriff, and beside it now, something more ominous. Sheriff bleeds next. The way the letters were carved, erratic but deep, felt performative. A message. Yes, but not to him. Ethan knew threats when they were genuine. This one was theater, but the blood was real. The stable's lantern swung lazily from a central beam, casting long, trembling shadows across the straw-covered floor. The flicker of flame gave the bloodstains a sickly shimmer, like they pulsed with some terrible life of their own. Flies buzzed in the corners, drawn by the iron scent. Horses in their stalls shifted uneasily, hooves clopping softly, snorting with fear and confusion. One let out a shrill whinny that echoed through the rafters like a scream. Ethan crouched, examining the floorboards. Something had soaked deep into the straw cattle blood. No, too dark, too fresh, human. He spotted hoof marks overlaid with boots. A horse had been used to drag Clay's body. He moved carefully, boots muffled against damp straw. He bagged rope fibers, tested the knot triple hitch, military style. That detail stuck with him. In Juarez, he'd seen the same knot in a narco execution. Whoever killed Clay knew how to kill efficiently and theatrically. From above, wind howled through a broken pane, chilling the already damp air. Ethan's breath fogged. A loose hinge creaked steadily with the breeze, ticking like a clock. He looked up, no birds in the rafters, just silence, death, and the echo of ritual. He walked outside, the sky bleeding orange. The dew glistened. The trail was thin but readable synthetic fiber traces on thistle, a print from a steel-toed boot, a small scrap of denim snagged on barbed wire. Ethan pocketed it. Hours later, while townsfolk whispered behind shuttered windows and coffee mugs, Ethan stood in the burned shack he'd discovered at dawn. There, nailed crudely to the wall, was a sheriff's department patch, partially melted. Not Whiskey's. Another county. A mock hanging of a chicken dangled nearby, same knot, same rope, a rehearsal. And then Ethan saw it, a map, scorched around the edges but salvageable. Circles drawn in charcoal, the stables, the shack, and a trail heading north, toward the mines, toward Randy Dobbs. He headed to the archives. Deputy Hart joined him. Together they pulled old court records, land registry filings, and police incident reports. Clay Dobbs had been listed as co-owner of the Dobbs Ranch, but 3 years ago, he'd quietly transferred his share to a shell company tied to O'Connell. On paper, the ranch sale was legal, but behind it was an unreported loan default Clay had gambled and lost. Digging deeper, Ethan discovered Randy had a sealed file in military archives, a dishonorable discharge. Records showed time with a PMC in Ukraine. Not just a contractor, but someone trained for psychological warfare. That explained the theatrics. Billy brought another piece, a photo from a local bar's security cam showing Clay and Randy arguing violently 2 nights before the murder. And behind them, Ellie Mars. That night, Ethan rode out. The wind howled between canyon walls as Ethan dismounted near Randy's shack. Billy flanked right. Inside, the lights were off, but Ethan could smell gun oil. He crept in. There, on the table, lay bloodied gloves, a coil of the same rope, and a second branding iron with the crooked K. Randy emerged from the shadows with a rifle. "You shouldn't be here." "Cole." Ethan didn't flinch. You staged the whole thing to look like someone was coming after me. I warned Clay. He was selling us out, bringing in O'Connell's filth. That land's ours. Ethan didn't argue. He threw down a folder inside, photos, fiber samples, the map, and the confession Randy had written in a drunken scrawl. Billy stepped in, shotgun drawn. It's over. Randy hesitated, then slowly lowered his weapon. Back in town, the truth unraveled quickly. Randy confessed to the murder, the setup, and the staged threats. He'd hoped to turn the town against Ethan long enough to complete a land grab. The woman behind the tannery, a drifter named Ellie Mars. She had seen Clay and Randy fighting days before and threatened to talk, so Randy silenced her, planting the photo to throw Ethan off balance. But when pressed, Randy confessed something darker. He admitted he'd seen Ethan as the town's undoing, someone who'd dig into the soil of the place and expose every buried sin. Clay was just a beginning. Randy was preparing for more. A message. Not just to Ethan, but to the whole town. Ethan was shaken but vindicated. The townspeople's reactions were mixed. Some wept, ashamed of their doubt. Others left baked goods and apologies at the station steps. A few held back silent, skeptical. But a letter came that changed everything. Signed only M.L. It read, "You stayed when others would have run. Clay paid for his sins, but you bore ours. Thank you." But Ethan wasn't resting. That night, he returned to the stables alone. There, he recreated the scene in his head step by step. Clay had trusted Randy, walked willingly into the trap. The horse had been his own, the tools familiar. And Randy hadn't rushed, he had made art out of violence. That chilled Ethan more than anything. As Ethan stood in the stall, he noticed something new, a seam in the wood paneling. He pried it open inside. A tiny notebook. Clay's handwriting. Randy's been stockpiling. Explosives. Says we need to take back what's ours. He's lost it. I want out. But I'm scared. Ethan knew then Clay had tried to back away, and that got him killed. He took the notebook to the mayor, and later that week, under Ethan's quiet coordination, a warrant was served on Randy's hidden stockpile near the bluffs. Inside were explosives, weapons, and blueprints, not just for land takeover, but targeting town leadership. This wasn't just a feud, it was nearly an uprising. But something still didn't sit right with Ethan. That branding iron. The second one. The curvature of the K was reversed. A mirror image of the one found in the shack. He pulled out both branding irons and studied them side by side. One had soot from the recent fire. The other, oddly pristine. It meant someone else had made a copy, or had been given the original. Days passed. Ethan dug deeper into Randy's connections. A name came up in the old land records. Mary Beth Langtree, M.L. From the letter. She was Clay's former bookkeeper. Fired abruptly 2 years ago. Lived out past the salt flats. When Ethan arrived at her home, he found it abandoned but not untouched. Fresh tire tracks. A cigarette still warm in the ashtray. On the wall, someone had carved a spiral symbol into the wooden doorframe, and on the table, a note. You stopped one man, Ethan, but you haven't stopped what's coming. Sometimes, fire doesn't destroy, it reveals, and some killers don't leave fingerprints, they leave chapters. And Ethan had only reached halfway through the book. 2 weeks after Randy's arrest, a stranger arrived in whiskey. A young woman, thin, bruised, carrying a boy with wide, wary eyes. They spoke little, only saying they needed work and shelter. Ethan helped them settle into a small rental near the Orchard Road. He didn't ask about their past, but he noticed the boy flinched at thunder. The mother never locked the door. In the mornings, Ethan brought firewood. On Sundays, food. He helped fix the porch steps, and soon, the whispers started. They say the sheriff's keeping a girl out there. Maybe she's a witness, or worse. Didn't know Ethan was the charity type. Some townsfolk averted their eyes when Ethan passed. Others stared too long. Anonymous notes began to appear slipped under the office door, scrawled on brown paper. Whiskey doesn't need saviors. One fire's enough. Still, Ethan did what he always did. He watched. He waited. The flames were already licking the rooftop when Ethan arrived. The porch had collapsed. Smoke billowed through the orchard trees. He didn't wait. He ran into the fire, coat over his mouth, shouting the woman's name. He found her on the floor, burned, unconscious, but breathing. No sign of the boy. Ethan tore through the back door, coughing, eyes burning, until he spotted a tiny figure crouched in the root cellar, curled up, trembling, alive. He carried the boy out through the smoke. The crowd outside gasped, then fell silent. Ethan collapsed, boy in arms, soot-covered, eyes sharp, and as the boy clung to him, whispering through cracked lips, Ethan heard something that changed everything. It wasn't an accident. He came back. He said it. And Ethan knew. The next fire wasn't just tragedy. It was a message. And the devil in whiskey no longer came with a gun. He came with a book.